Just across the street from the Capitol in Salt Lake City, this is the Pioneer Memorial Museum, run by the Daughters of Utah Pioneers. Housing the most exhibits I've ever seen in a museum, this magnificent, imposing structure holds tens of thousands of artifacts from the pioneer settlers into the valley of the Great Salt Lake in Utah. In this four-story building with an annex are the items brought by covered wagons with the settlers, the furniture and personal goods they considered essential for starting life in a nearly desert wilderness.
This building is on 4 levels. You're here on the first level, and then there's 2 levels above, and there's a basement. And off the basement, there will be a sign that says "To the Carriage House," which will be a tunnel that will take you to 2 levels of the carriage house. A lot of the artifacts here, of course, were kind of saved in different places over the years, but finally when they had this home, this building, then they were put on display here. And that we consider pioneers anyone that, entered this area from probably about 1847, with the first groups coming in with Brigham Young. And then in 1869, the railroads were joined up in Promontory, which is just north of here. And then people could actually come west on railroad after that.
There's a whole room commemorating the railroad completion, including this replica of the Golden Spike.
But probably I think they estimate over 70,000 people migrated during that pioneer era.
Wow.
To come in this area. Yeah, from 1847 to 69.
22 years. Besides the impressive effect of seeing so many artifacts, I found it amazing as to how well documented was every little piece. Each watch has its own history. Even the white gloves have detailed documentation of their heritage. 3rd floor, clocks and canes.
In the carriage house, you'll see the bigger items.
Okay.
The hand carts, the wagons, the tools. Yeah, and a restored fire engine, an old restored fire engine. Just almost everything you can imagine that these pioneers either brought with them or acquired later, after they were here.
What was your name?
My name is Carrie. I can give you a card.
Great, I'll give you a card too. It's all donated, and it was started in 1901.
Yes, it was after the Pioneer Jubilee, which was the 50th year and celebration from the pioneers who entered the valley in 1847. So in 1897, they had what they called the Pioneer Jubilee, and they invited all pioneers from 1847 that were surviving to come to Salt Lake. And they asked people to contribute artifacts of the pioneers, because they realized that the pioneers were dying off and the artifacts were getting lost. So they created a museum called the Hall of Relics. And they actually built a museum downtown, and it was a temporary structure. and they housed, including the Brigham Young wagon that we have upstairs, in this building. And from that came the seed of these women said, well, and it was only supposed to be open for 6 months, and it was open for 2 years. They kept this Hall of Relics open. And the women said, okay, we need to have an organization that preserves artifacts from the pioneers and their stories. And so in 1901, a woman named Annie Taylor Hyde, she was John Taylor's daughter. She started the foundation out of her home on April 11th, and they immediately started taking in artifacts. And we have a lot of things given to us by like Brigham Young's children, and things that were, you know, their parents at the time. So we know that the provenance is pretty rock solid. And they first were displayed at the Lion House downtown, because that's where then they started meeting in the Lion House. And then they kind of got removed from the Lion House and they went to the Information Bureau, which was on Temple Square. It was like a little museum that they had there. And eventually they grew too big for that. And so they went to the state capitol, and in the basement of the state capitol, they had a big display of artifacts, including, again, the Brigham Young wagon. And then they decided, well, we needed money for our own building. So they started a fundraiser in the 20s. They started, and actually it really picked up steam in the 1930s. When they started publishing books of lessons. So every month in the DUP camp meetings, they teach a lesson on different topics. And so they sold these books as fundraiser for the museum.
Oh, so it's a fundraiser through books.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you keep supporting it now?
It's the state owns the building.
Okay.
And so the state pays for the utilities and the janitorial services. And then the majority of the people here are volunteers. 1947 for the centennial.
Yeah.
And there was actually some legal trouble because some residents in the local area thought it was a mixture of church and state.
Uh-huh.
But the DUP has been and really stressed the fact that they're a non-denominational organization. And so that lawsuit took a few years, so the building didn't open until 1950.
Okay.
And then, I'll keep telling you, so in they started getting a lot of bigger items, and they had a woman who donated all of her fortune. Her name was Sarah Marie Van Dyke, and they built this carriage house, which is a totally separate building, and it was built in the early 70s. And that tunnel that you walk through, that big long hallway, is a tunnel under the parking lot. And so they did the carriage house. I think it was 1973 or 74 is when they dedicated the carriage house. And then we had did you see the...
I haven't been upstairs yet.
Oh, okay.
I've been in the other part of the building.
Okay, there's a fire engine upstairs.
Yeah, that's right here.
So for the 100th year of celebration of statehood in 1996, the women worked to restore that fire engine, and they needed a place to put it, so they built this little section of the building. Yeah, and they toured the fire engine around the state for a couple of years. They took it in parades and stuff, and then they put it in the building, finished it off, and there's really no way to get it out now. That's what they did with a lot of these wagons. They lowered them in by crane. and then finished the rest of the building around them.
Being a physician myself, I'm always fascinated by displays related to medicine. Here we have photos of over 50 physician pioneers. If there were 70,000 immigrants in that time, that averages out to one provider per 1,400 settlers. According to the Mississippi Department of Health, our state ratio is actually worse at 1 to 1,900. It's not clear where these physicians received their training, or even if they went to medical school at all, but there is documentation of certification. In those days, a lot of physicians wrote their own medical books based on their experiences. This instrument is used to remove kidney stones from the bladder. Ooh, that must have hurt. Ah, a physician poet. I like that. Here's Dr. Lee, his medical supplies, and his old black bag. How about a preserved baby skull as a souvenir? Common medicines in the 1840s included opium, morphine, willow bark for fever, and cathartics. Here's a complete optometrist setup. And mortars and pestles for grinding your own drugs. The medical tools of the day certainly look different from what we use. Amputation knives and plastic surgery hooks, all sorts of really unusual supplies.
But throughout the museum you find just regular people's, there's a toothbrush, there's, coffee grinders, there's all kinds of things that just belong to regular people. And I think people get a thrill out of that. When they come in, they have a pioneer ancestor, and I can look up in my database where this stuff is if we have anything. And then they can go and have stuff that otherwise might not have been saved.
You have tremendous numbers of photographs, and I guess almost all of them have names on them.
Yes.
Do we know more about them than their names? Do you have records on them?
Yes, we do. We have biographical data of a lot of the pioneers. Actually, upstairs there's the history department, and they have a whole room full of files of the pioneers, and so they're biographies written by descendants. And we have an index on our website for both photos and histories. They're all digitized, but you still have to come in here to get them. And you can see basically what your pioneer ancestor looked like.
That is amazing.
So,
and I guess it's like Arlington. You say, "Where's my father?" So it's on the second floor on this picture.
That's what we have, and probably only I would say about a third of our photographic collections on the walls.
No wonder.
The rest are all smaller sized pictures, and they're housed in the photo department, which is between the two buildings. As you head back, you'll notice to the left, there's a lot of file.
That is amazing. I just love this museum. I gotta go take pictures now of the fire engine and the Brigham Young cart. And what is this cart right there?
The trolley.
The trolley?
It's a Salt Lake trolley car, yeah.
Oh, nice.
Which is timely because they are just now uncovering the trolley tracks on State Street.
Oh.
Have you seen that?
I haven't.
Yeah, if you go down State Street, they were doing some construction in the middle of the road and they found the trolley tracks.
Oh,
So they're now exposed. I don't know what they're planning to do with them, but they're exposed on State Street right now.
This woman talks about her great-grandfather as a pioneer. In what way is it your heritage?
Well, my great-grandfather, he's
There we
got
go, try
a
it.
lot of things here in his picture, and he came across the plains, and
Okay, your grandfather came across the plains. Is some of the stuff here from your grandfather? Oh,
great-grandfather.
your great-grandfather?
Yeah.
So you've been here for 4 generations. What kind of things are here from your grandfather?
He started all the grist mills,
He worked at a mill.
and so there's some tools, and
Thanks so much. That was nice. Next time you're in Salt Lake City, be sure and visit the Pioneer Memorial Museum. Please subscribe to my YouTube videos.